Hello and welcome. This is Lino Tadros, and in this video what I would love to show is the fact that you don't have to do all your prompt flow development inside of Azure AI Foundry user interface. So far we have actually created a lot of different prompt flows, but for right now I would like to actually use my assets that I created in my Azure AI Foundry Hub and project. That's great. I have an Azure OpenAI and I have SERP and I have other things as well, Azure AI Search. But I would like to actually open up maybe one of my development environment locally, like Visual Studio Code, for instance. And I would like to create a flow that takes advantage of all of these different assets, but I would like to use my machine with all the power that I have on my machine, with all the packages and debugging of Visual Studio Code, and run it from right inside of there for development purposes. Let's go ahead and see how we can do that. All right, as you can see right here, we have a lot of different prompt flows that I've used in the last maybe few videos in this series, but I'd like to create one not from here. I'd like to do one using the assets that I have in my management center. Notice my Lino AI Hub, blah, 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 AOAI, AI services, the Azure AI Search, the serverless for Cohere. I want to be able to use all of these assets, but I do not want to start the prompt flow itself from the Azure AI Foundry. Let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio and see how we can do that. All right, there is a Visual Studio Code, and I actually have a completely empty folder on my machine. It's on the D drive. It's called PF Demo for prompt flow, but it has nothing in it whatsoever, okay? The first thing we want to do, we want to install the prompt flow for Visual Studio Code. That will take care of a lot of things for me, including also all the packages and the Python package that needs to be installed on your machine, whether you're using Conda or you're using virtual environment, VMV. All of these have to happen first. All right, let's go to the extensions in Visual Studio Code. Look for something called prompt flow. And there it is, prompt flow for Visual Studio Code. I'm going to click on install in here, and it will take only a few seconds. And there it is, it's all done. And where is that at this point? Well, if you come in here to the three dots, if you don't see it automatically in here, this is says prompt flow, click on it. And this is the nice logo P in here, means prompt flow. And it comes in with a quick access, flows, tools, batch run, and the connections, which is also very, very important for us as well. In your case, you're probably going to see right before the quick access tells you that the packages are not there yet. We don't have prompt flow SDK installed. No problem. Click on the install dependencies. And this page in here will help you get to where you need to be. First of all, it will ask you which Python interpreter you want to use. I already installed prompt flow packages inside of Conda. I also did it in multiple folders using VNV as well. So it's all up to you which one virtual environment you want to use. If you do not have that, the goal is to actually have these 6 different green check marks. In the beginning, all of them will be red X's, alrighty? So you want to make sure you follow this, activate your Conda or VNV, and then go ahead and install the pip for prompt flow and the prompt flow core and prompt flow tools and the dev kit and the tracing and Azure. Yes, there are some things that you have to do a pip install on, like 5 or 6 different packages. But after you're done with that, go ahead and use which Python interpreter has all of these installed. So I already installed them in Conda on my machine. So I'm going to click on that, and there is my, where did it go? Blah, 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 blah. All right, there it is. Okay. And then be patient. Sometimes people think that something went wrong. Well, give it about 5 seconds and the green check marks will show up, which is great. And now it's checking all the different packages, whether they're installed or not. Do not continue until all of them have the check mark in green. So we're going to give it here a few seconds, and hopefully when it comes back, there you go, all 6 of them are in green checks. All right, using the correct Python interpreter, and we're good. Now I can actually leave this guy knowing that this is working. I would like to create a brand new flow at this point. Let's go ahead and say plus, and it could be an empty flow, a standard flow, a chat flow, an evaluation flow. If you remember, we can do the same thing from the user interface inside of the Azure AI Foundry. I'm going to say, let's go ahead and start with an empty flow. I'm going to say empty flow. Again, you can call it whatever you want, of course. Alrighty. In my empty flow in here, let me go ahead and open it up. You can open it, of course, using the code, the YAML code. So if I go back in here, notice in the folder PF demo, there will be now an empty flow, and there is my YAML for the flow.dag.yaml. If I open it up, there is not much in here. I have the inputs, outputs, nodes, and then hopefully this will get a lot more once we start having some nodes in there. But if I go back, if I say open from the prompt flow extension, look what happens. I'm going to end up getting very similar user interface to what I get inside of the Azure AI Foundry. Isn't that pretty cool? So let me make this a little bit smaller. This is where the graph is going to show up. It's completely empty like I asked it to. And we'll say add input. We'll give it a name. We'll say question, for instance. And the question I'm going to ask is, why is the sky blue? Alrighty? Like I always use that to just make sure my LLM is working. Alrighty? And then for the output, let me go ahead and also add an output. We'll say output. And right now I'm not going to reference it because I don't know what the name I'm going to create for the LLM yet. So we'll say Control S there. Before I go any further, how am I going to actually make this flow know about my assets inside of the Azure AI Foundry? Right now, this guy is running on my local machine, has no clue which hub or project or asset access for the Azure OpenAI or anything. So if you notice, if I go all the way down in here to where we have connections, all of them are empty. So if I open each and every single one of them is empty because there is no connection. So the important thing first, click on the ellipses in here and we'll say set connection provider. Do you want to use local connections? Do you want to use Azure AI connections based on a working folder? Or do you want to make it on the entire machine? In my case, I have to use local or I have to use working directory because I have a lot of different projects on my machine for different customers, for instance, so I cannot use one for everybody. So it will probably be working directly. For right now, we'll say local connections. What does that mean? That means when I actually go to the Azure OpenAI and I say I'd like to create a brand new connection, so click on the plus sign, it will give you a YAML file right here that will ask you to change some things in it. First of all, I need to know what the name of your connection is. So I need to get that from my Azure AI Foundry. And also the API base, I need to replace that with my endpoint. These are the only two things that you need to change in this file. Do not change the API key that says user input. Do not change it. Some people will remove this and will paste their API key. If you do that, it will not work. You'll get an authentication error when you do that because we said authentication mode. That means when I create the connection later on, it will ask you what the API key is. So we will do that, I promise. So leave it alone for right now. Let's go ahead and go back to this guy, all right, and we'll say Management Center, and we will click on the Azure OpenAI. There are three things that I need from this page. First of all, I need the name. So we'll say copy this guy, Control C, and let's go back to Visual Studio, and I'm going to replace the name with the exact name that I got from there. All right, let me go ahead and fix that mumbo jumbo stuff. All right, and then I'm going to go back. Let's do a Control Tab in here so I can get back to it. And I'm going to get the URL. All right. Alrighty, and we will get the API key as well. Let me go ahead and get back in here. And oh, sorry, I got the wrong one. My bad. I need the URL. Let me get this guy. And we're going to replace this one with Control V on that one as well. Okay, do not change anything else. I'm going to say Control S to save this file. Very important. And I'm going to say create the connection. Once we say create the connection, look what happens at the bottom in here. It's going to ask me for the API key. Alrighty. So once you get the API key, and we'll go ahead and say Control CLS to release that stuff. Connection has been established. We'll say CLS. And now if you wait a few seconds, the Azure OpenAI will have our Lino AI hub with the Azure OpenAI inside of it as well. So we'll come back in here as soon as this is done, open it up, and there it is. There is the AOAI available and telling you exactly where is it coming from. All right, that's great. So at this point, if I would like to go ahead and continue with my DAG YAML file, I'm going to go ahead into Tools. Let me close this down so you can see it better. Let me close this guy. We'll go to Tools. There you go. I'm going to even close this one. Okay, so now this is where I have all the different nodes: Python, LLM, prompt, everything you're used to from inside of the Azure AI Foundry itself. I need to create an LLM. Let's click on that. We'll say plus, and we'll call it, for instance, test LLM. You can call it anything you want. Do you want to actually override an existing file, or you'd like to create a brand new file? I don't have one, so I'm going to say create a brand new file, and there it is. Alrighty. So now I'm going to actually have to hook it up to a connection. I already see that I have a connection for this guy. We'll click on this. And then for the API itself, I can actually use it as a chat or a completion if you want. The deployment name is not like what we are used to inside of the Azure AI Foundry, where this would be a drop down that you can see your model deployment GPT 4.0, for instance. No, you have to enter it yourself. This will probably get added later on to that extension. Let's say GPT 4.0 in here. Maybe we'll change the template to make it 0.2 and the maximum tokens, let's say 500. And we're good. Now it needs a couple of more things. The question we know is going to be the inputs.question. But because I said this is going to be a chat, I need to have the chat history. No problem. Let's go back to the add input and we'll call it chat underscore history. But it cannot be a string, folks. It has to be a list because we're going to keep adding to that history as well. Okay, we'll say Control S there. Let's go back down and hopefully we can see the chat history and we should be in good shape. The only thing left is the output. The output now will be coming in from the test LLM output like we've done in the regular user interface. Let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see it. So now my graph looks right. The input will have the question, why is the sky blue? We'll go into the LLM. The LLM will do its job, and then the output will come out right in here as well. All right. Can I actually run this? Actually, let's make sure first we'll do a Control S for saving. And you see there is a run button in here. If I click on it, and now it's going to try to use my connection information with everything I've done in the output, and let's see if this will succeed. Oh, there is an error, and the error in here usually means that there is something wrong with the authentication. That means in my connection, let me close this down so I can see it better. There is my connection. This guy, if I right click on it and say update connection, yes, it did change, so I did something wrong. You see, it has to be called user input. It cannot be say no change because I said in a key. So it has to ask me for it. So I'm gonna change all of that. We'll say greater than, close then, and we'll say user input. Like this, and we'll say Control S. Alrighty, we'll save it, and then we'll say update the connection. But before I do that, I really need to remember to get this API key again into the clipboard. All right, let's go ahead and say update the connection. And notice now it's asking me for the API key. See, that's the important piece that did not happen before. Control V there. And there is my API. All right, I can actually clear this up. Now I know that this would be a user input and we should be in pretty good shape. This now is updating the Azure OpenAI connection. Check output channel, see what the error is. Okay, registered yet? Oh, it's still registering, that's why. So we'll need to be patient until the list of all connections is done. All right, it's done. All right, now I can actually run this from my terminal and we'll say Control S again, and we'll run it. Drums rolling, please. Now that I have the correct API key in my connection, I should be able to get an answer for my question. And still we have a problem. Okay, let's see what this is now. And honestly, I've seen this happen before, but it's a glitch in the extension Visual Studio Code. Again, all of the stuff is under development in a speed of light. Every day, things are going very, very fast. So whenever you get this kind of problem with the 401 message unauthorized, whenever you see unauthorized, it has to do with the connection. So I'm going to go back to my prompt flow. The best way, so you don't actually have to go through that bug, I'm going to right click on it and we'll say delete the connection. We'll say confirm this guy. It will take a few seconds to remove completely the connection and you need to recreate it again. And the important thing is, once you add the name of the connection and also the endpoint, make sure you have the API key in the clipboard before you actually save the file. Otherwise, if you actually do an Alt Tab, you will lose the API key. Alrighty, so right now I don't have an Azure OpenAI. Let me go ahead and say I would like to create in here. We'll do an extra one right there. And we will go through all of the stuff that we have done before. This is the first one. We'll say copy this guy. And in here, we'll remove this name. We'll put it in here, Control V. The important thing for me, folks, is that this API key has to stay user-input. It cannot move to no change. Otherwise, it will not work, okay? So we'll have one of those in here, and then let's go back and get it again. We'll say get the URL. And in here, we'll change this one more time. Control V this guy. And that's it. Now, before you actually do the create connection, don't click on this yet. Make sure you go back in here and you have the API key already in your clipboard. Otherwise, you will not have time to be able to do it. Once you Alt Tab again, it's gone. Alrighty, so that is an issue with that right now. All right, so I'm going to save this file. I'm going to say create the connection. And look what happens at the bottom when I say create connection. It's going to ask me for the API key. There it is. And now I'm going to say Control V to my API key and we'll say go. And now I should be in a pretty good shape. Just wait for the list of all connections to finish. So you see that blue line running. That means it's still trying to resolve it. You will not be able to run anything until this is available in the Azure OpenAI in here. And you can see the Lino AI, whatever the name of the Azure OpenAI in there. All right, I'm in pretty good shape. Let me go back in here with the CLS. And I would like to run this again without any modification, of course, to this guy. All right, let me go ahead and say save this and run it. Drums rolling, and this time I know that this will work because this guy has the correct API key in it as well. There will be no unauthorized problem in there at all. Yeah, it's going to work. And now it's asking the question, why is the sky blue? And there it is. This is because shorter wavelengths are closer and blah, 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 and all that good stuff. Alrighty. I can make this a little bit smaller so I can show you also in the output. I have the entire output in here. I can say show all, and the entire answer that came back from the LLM is available for me in here. The nice thing about this is that I'm running here locally. I can debug it. I can actually, especially when I'm using Python, it would be much easier for me to add Python nodes in here and being able to debug it right inside of Visual Studio Code to find out exactly how things are being passed from one node to the other and so on. Again, if you prefer to do this from the user interface, great. If you prefer to do this locally on your machine using the assets that you have in the connections and Azure OpenAI and SERP and Azure AI Search and Cosmos DB and all that, you can, and you can continue building all your flows locally on your machine as well. I hope this was useful to you to see. I left the errors in there because a lot of people will get them. I didn't want to just have it working perfectly, but people will get disappointed when things are not working. So I just wanted to show you what kind of errors you might get also using the authentication. There is, of course, some bugs here and there. This changes so fast, but I'm hoping that you still enjoyed and learned something from this video as well. If you liked it, please click on like, and hopefully you can subscribe to the channel so we can see you again in future videos from the Training Boss. Thank you so much.